Hi, in this module, we are going to see how to create data templates to represent visually the data coming from your data feeds. The methods we are going to see here will apply whether you are getting your data from an Excel file, a web service through the API Explorer, or any custom interface asset you may have developed for your experience. First, let's see how to create a data template. We are going to reuse the Excel file from the Excel module. Just as a reminder, this Excel file has a few columns showing information about paintings for Van Gogh. These are the columns in our Excel file. First way to create a data feed and a data template would be to just drag and drop your Excel file on the scene. As you can see, we have a new collection here, paintings, which is an asset grid by default. This rows here is going to be the data feed, meaning if you had multiple data sources, data feeds in your experience, you could switch them here in this properties panel. The line below this is going to be our data template, meaning the template used to represent the data coming from your data feed. So drag and drop from Excel file directly on the scene is the method number one. Let's see another one. Selecting our Excel file and looking at the extra panel, we can have access to its properties. Excel is fairly simple. You have one list. That's the list of rows in this Excel file. If you had an API coming from web services, you may have multiple and you can select the one you want to visualize. In this case, let's click on rows and drag and drop this directly on the scene. In our case, the result is the same. In the case of a more complex data feed, it will help you to select exactly which feed, which collection you want to visualize. If you don't want to see all these properties, but you're interested only in, let's say, the image here, you can also drag and drop directly the image or click on this button to create a data feed with a much simpler data template, just one single image here in this case. The last method we are going to see will be to start from the collection. Let's assume we have an asset grid in our scene like this, and with maybe some static content. You can do a right click here, insert, data feed, and you can see in the scene structure, it created a generic data feed with a generic data template. Click on data feed, it will select the first one available, and again, you can change this here in the properties. You may notice that this image and the two texts here don't have yet a binding, so you will need, in this case, to add manually your binding, selecting your data source, in this case, the rows of our paintings, and binding the image property to the image column on the Excel file. Similarly, to change the text, you can add a binding to your text asset and pick the right column, the right field from your data feed to display this value. If you wish to add a new property to your data feed, you can always open the X-ray panel and select the property you're interested in visualizing and drag and drop it. It will automatically create a text asset or an image asset and the proper binding to the property you drag and dropped on the scene. Now, let's see how to modify a data template in your scene. Let's start from the default template created for an Excel file, meaning all the columns are available here. The first way to work with the data template is actually to double-click on your collection. You can see it goes with dashed lines on the border. Select one of the items, and you can see I selected the first one here. In the scene structure, the template is selected. I could work on the second one or the third one. It would always do the same thing. If I change the size here, it changes the size for all the items because in the end, it changes the size of the template. Since this template is a group, if you double click again in the scene, you can see the dashed line is now at the group level and you can select its children. You can then say, in this case, I want to keep only the name and the image. So I will select the 4 additional text and delete them. And you can then adjust the template to the design you're looking for. In our case, we are going to just reduce a little bit the size of this image put the text below and center it. You can see you can always resize your template, and again, it will resize it for all the items in the list. So far, we used binding for an image and a text, but you can use bindings for many other things. In the case of our Excel file, we do have a main color associated to each painting. We can use this to set a background in our template. In the assets, I will add a rectangle here. Let's resize it to the full size of our group of the template and then send it to the background. And we can then add a binding on the fill color to use this main color column from the Excel file. I can then just adjust the text, its font size, and its font. Once you're done with the template, you may want to adjust the collection itself. So far, we had an asset grid. In our design, we want to switch this one to an asset flow. This is the style button of a collection where you can change one collection to another, as you have seen in previous modules. We can then adjust the collection properties as usual. A second way to edit the data template is actually to take it outside of the collection by doing a drag and drop from the template itself, the root group of this template. Let's drag it on the layer itself. Now it's outside of the collection. Adjust it to the design you're looking for again. So let's remove all these texts. And again, put the image at the top, our text right below, centered and bigger. Adjust the group size. And then you can just drag and drop this template back on the rows of paintings, back on the data feed in your collection. Using this method can be helpful when you're using a collection where you don't see all the items, or if, for example, you're using a collection like the carousel or the helix with some kind of 3D effects, where it is a bit more easier to edit the template outside of the collection itself. In addition to the design and the properties of the data template that you can adjust, you can also add triggers and actions on this template. Let's see a few examples. Collections like this asset flow have a notion of focus, the item which is in front of the others. Meaning the items in the collection will have some specific triggers when an item is moved into focus or moved out of focus. Let's add information below the collection, which will give us some information about the painting which is currently in focus. We will put a center text here with the year, and maybe another one below, bigger, with the description. Both texts might be empty by default. Selecting the template itself, not the collection, the template. You can add a trigger, and because the template is a child of an asset flow, you will see these two triggers moved into focus, out of focus. In this case, we want to do something when the template is moved into focus. Then, in our two new text assets, the year and the description, we want to dynamically change the text, and then again we can use a binding to get the value from our current data field. In this case, it is the year. We can duplicate this action, do the same thing for our description, and select the right field in our data feed. Let's test this in play mode. When navigating in the collection, the information below will change depending on the item which gets in focus. You can also use these triggers to call in actions inside the data template. Let's say we want the rectangle, the background, and the text to be visible only when this item has the focus. Let's call this focus group. Let's hide it by default and add some actions on this trigger. When the template is moved into focus, we want, in addition to setting the two texts, to do something inside our data template. Focus group, we want to show this one. Let's copy the action, add the opposite trigger. When the template is moved out of focus, we want to hide the focus group instead. Let's see what it looks like. When selecting a new item, the text is changing below. The new background and text and title are displayed in the main data template, while the previously selected object, the previously object in focus, loses its background and text. In addition to the focus-related triggers, you can also use some is-tab triggers or button triggers on the template itself, like here, or on some elements within the template, like an additional button, to display some additional information related to the particular item which was clicked on. In this case, we have an additional group which will appear on top, showing all the information we have in our data feed, title, year, dimensions, etc. This is done with one single trigger and works whether you have 5 items in your data feed or 50 or 500. To learn more about this mechanism, please have a look at this article, How to Display Data Feeds Using a Summary List, our asset flow with the paintings, with a detailed view, our group pop-up with all the fields available in the data feed.